But of conservative-leaning students, 53% said yes. A professor that says something offensive should be reported to university officials. I was kind of gobsmacked by that. Like, conservatives are supposed to be the side that gets it on this.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Base Politics Podcast. I'm Hannah Cox with Brad Polumbo. This week, a disturbing new survey shows that college students want to report their professors for stating offensive facts. Also, a missing woman in Alabama has the Black community enraged, and so much more. Let's jump in.
We should probably talk about our main topic today, which is this really insane survey that the North Dakota State University, some academics there just conducted of college students, which reveals some pretty disturbing trends. So the top line figure, though there's a lot more to the survey than just this, is that they asked students, if a professor says something that students find offensive, should that professor or instructor be reported to the university? And a whopping 74% of students said yes. Now, I was perturbed by this, but it actually gets even worse because 81% of liberal-leaning students said yes, which, frankly, is what I expect from the left at this point. But of conservative-leaning students, 53% said yes. A professor that says something offensive should be reported to university officials. I was kind of gobsmacked by that. Like, conservatives are supposed to be the side that gets it on this.
See, I'm not surprised by that. I think conservatives are every bit as big of snowflakes on cultural issues as the left. I'm not surprised that they want to look at the response to Barbie, like we just talked about. I think that this is actually a huge instinct amongst the right. Yes, legally, I still think that there is more respect for free speech amongst leaders and politicians and certainly judges on the right. But I think your rank and file person is increasingly not capable of entertaining thoughts they don't hold. They become enraged by it. They don't have the ability to actually defend their ideas or debunk those on the other side. So they just want to shut them down. They want to be in their echo chambers. I'm not really surprised by either side, unfortunately.
So I am, just if anything, because conservative students and the student groups are the ones who've been censored the most on college campuses. They're speakers, they're groups. So, and I really do think that they, generally speaking, have been the ones fighting back against censorship culture. But I was surprised by that. I'm not 100% sure it's a fully representative survey or sample, but the fact that any conservative students would go along with such an obviously insane standard, it's really disturbing to me because some people have said, well, what if the question wording is vague? So what if what they really meant was harassing or calling someone slurs? Of course, that should be reported, right? Well, I would agree that a professor who calls a Black student the N-word should be reported to the university, of course. But that's not actually what we're talking about here, because the survey went on and asked them, which of the following statements should a professor be reported for? And among liberal students, these statements they thought should be reported. The statement, quote, if you look at the data, there is no evidence of anti-Black bias in police shootings, end quote. 51% of liberal students and 38% of independent students thought they should be reported for that. The statement that requiring vaccination for COVID is an assault on individual freedom, 45% of liberal students thought a professor should be reported for making that statement. Saying that affirmative action is doing more harm than good and should be eliminated, 37% of liberal students said they should be reported for that. And then finally, this one I thought was just truly mind-boggling and insane. The statement that biological sex is a scientific fact and there are two sexes, male and female, 36% of liberal students thought a professor should be reported for saying that. That's not even an opinion. The other ones are mainstream center-right opinions, which you should be able to hear without reporting someone to HR. But that last one is a fact. You can't even say offensive facts without a sizable chunk of the student body wanting to report you. That's insane.
Yeah, I don't think academia is anywhere you'd want to be at this point, and nor has it been for some time. I think that's one reason why you don't have a lot of intellectual diversity within the schools is those who dare to push back get pushed out pretty quickly because this is the prevailing sentiment amongst students, and I think amongst other people in academia. It really is one of like censorship, shut people down. I know you went to a school where you probably had more of that experience. You also were coming up a little bit beneath me as far as age goes. I did not have this at my university. I'm really like, it's hard for me to conceptualize being in a classroom that would be like this, because my school was actually pretty middle of the road, I'd say. It had traditionally been a Southern Baptist conservative kind of school as far as like its foundings and funding. I had left the Southern Baptist Convention when I got there, was starting to move a little bit more left. It had a huge entertainment community, so you had a lot more left-wing people. So it had actually this really rich, like, I don't know, conversation that you would have in classroom that it really didn't typically become very antagonistic. And we had great discourse and debate. And I feel like I had a really good college experience compared to most. And so now when I think about being in these kinds of environments, just how stifling that would be and how little ability you would have to encounter views different than your own. Because I think that's one thing that I talk crap about college a lot. And I do think my college overcharged me and oversold their programs for sure. But what I will say is I often tell people Belmont was one of the most formative experiences in my life because I came from the rural South. I did not have a lot of diversity around me growing up. I really became much more cultured attending Belmont. I became much more aware of just other people and their backgrounds, much more open-minded, much less rigid in my thinking. And that was because of the exposure to people who were different than me and people who thought differently than me. And that was a really wonderful thing that we need in our society. We need people to be able to get out of their echo chambers and to meet people who are different than them. And I don't really know where that happens aside from college, because most people do live in such bubbles. So this is just, I think it's kind of dire, honestly. It really is indicative of a much deeper problem.
It is. I'm jealous of your college experience on that front, at least, because mine was the opposite. We literally had free speech zones and people would come up. We had, yes, if you wanted to have a demonstration, you had to have it outside a specific lawn outside the student union. And it could only be, I think, I'm not exactly sure on the details, but I think it was weekdays between noon and 1 p.m. It was literally,
What?
yes. And they actually, Young Americans for Liberty sued my college and got them to revoke that policy. So
Wait,
bravo
you'd
for
have to
that.
like go stand in a box to say things you thought
If you
and
wanted
like
to
a
have
vote?
any sort of protest or rally or event, you could only do it in one place at one time on certain days of the week. Yes.
Would there be like people competing like for that space? Like one person trying to protest one thing and somebody else there for something else?
Not
Or you
usually.
like
Usually it would be one
time?
at a time because there weren't a whole lot of protests because of it was such an chilling atmosphere, and the ones that
Yeah.
there were very left wing. But
Clear.
and that's kind of the problem with this whole mentality that we see on display in this poll and more broadly in campus atmospheres is that if you have a campus environment where even mainstream opinions can't be expressed without getting snitched on to the authorities, that obviously creates a chilling effect that will prevent people from saying what they think, that will hamper the free flow of ideas and exchange of information, and you're not really going to have meaningful learning happening in political science or economics or even places like biology, where apparently you can't say basic biological facts. If you have that kind of constrictive system and atmosphere and culture on campus, so you're really hampering the true purpose of education, which is to sharpen your mind, because you're just going to be regurgitating a stale dominant perspective. You don't learn a whole lot from that. Secondly, I think they're really failing to prepare students for the real world if this is the kind of attitude that's prevalent on campus, because the real world has lots of people who think affirmative action is counterproductive or that COVID vaccines shouldn't be mandatory. Like, you're going to have to encounter these opinions, and you're not going to get a trigger warning or a safe space or be able to snitch and report them to the police. That's not our society. So building these kinds of expectations and cultures and standards on college campuses is setting students up to fail, because it's not preparing them for what life is like on the outside in the real world, in the workplace, in communities, at home, and with families, with diverse views, all this stuff. And that's kind of supposed to be the point of college, right? Preparing young people for adulthood. And it really seems increasingly like they're just failing on so many levels.
Well, it's also interesting to me because the Gen Z and I guess whatever generation's coming up after them, X, what are they?
I
Who
don't know,
even
Gen Y maybe? I'm not
Y, I
sure.
don't know where we go from here, but they are so much more politically interested, I guess I'd say. Like, they seem to have a lot more opinions about politics, be weighing in more heavily. But it's interesting to me because for all of that interest, they are not learning how to actually do advocacy or be effective. When I read the statement that there's no anti-Black bias in policing, I roll my eyes. That's ridiculous. There's so much data that proves there is overt bias. And I think that that's something that we should talk about more and that we should try to adjust policy wise. But if you just say that this is a fact and you have to accept it's a fact and you aren't willing to actually engage on those kind of discussions and show people that data and help them understand why you're saying there's systemic racism, you actually do a huge disservice to the progress you're trying to achieve, right? I mean, the whole point is in establishing that there is anti-Black bias in policing is so that we could try to come together and fix it. But when you just want to shut down people when they disagree with you on an issue and you aren't willing to sort of handhold them and have that debate, you end up turning them off and shutting down any kind of discussion on those policy fronts. You're not going to really get anything done. And this is actually something I think you see from adults too in the real world. Even people who work in politics, even politicians at times, where they just want to sort of shout down anything on the right. They'll say that's fascist or this is extremism, or they'll say this over here is racism. And they just want you to take those things at face value without actually proving their point, without actually winning the debate, without actually bringing other people to their causes to get things done. And all you really do is invoke a lot of like hostility and bad feelings towards one another and the inability for people to even have conversations with people who think differently than them. So it's extremely counterintuitive to anybody who wants to actually see change happen on things that are important in our society. And yet these young people going through college are not learning those basic dynamics of how to move in the world, how to facilitate those kinds of exchanges, how to win people to your causes. And they're going to end up being really ineffective at whatever they put their mind to because of it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And what's interesting about this survey is the free speech part that we already discussed has gotten a lot of attention, but other aspects have not. And so this one finding was really shocking to me. Nearly 60% of students believe that life in the US has gotten worse or stayed the same over the last 50 years. So the pollsters asked students, quote, based on what you have learned in college so far, do you think that life in the United States has generally been getting better or worse over the last 50 years, considering issues such as life expectancy, income per person, etc.? 41% of students said better, a plurality, 46% said worse, and 13% say nothing has changed. So almost 60% thought things have gotten worse or stayed the same over the last 50 years. There's so many issues with that. One is just factually, income per person and life expectancy have significantly gone up over the last 50 years. But then when you zoom out, you think about like the social progress, what it was like for a woman or a gay person or even Black person 50 years ago versus today, it's so much growth and progress has happened. I mean, we all, even the poorest among us, or many of the poorest among us, walk around with supercomputers in their pockets. So obviously there's challenges. Not everything has gotten better, but on net, to actually believe that the life in the US has gotten worse overall between now and the 70s, to me it's a sign that you're being miseducated, not educated.
I mean, it seems like willful ignorance. I think that this is just a terrible take, but it's one I hear pushed a lot, especially on TikTok. It's very depressing there, where like there's this constant narrative that the US is bad, that it sucks to live there, it's a dystopian nightmare, it's so much better to move overseas. There's this whole, push on TikTok for people to leave the US and live overseas because it's so much better and you get all this more vacation time and you make more money and all these things are paid for by, I mean, it's an ongoing push, I think, to try to make people unsatisfied, to push class warfare. There's no excuse for believing this. I mean, you would have to have just not gone to any of your history classes, even in high school, to believe this. Honestly, I mean, really, you think about 50 years ago, women couldn't get a credit card in their own name. You still had Black people who were trying to get basic civil liberties and access to public places. I can't fathom having this mentality. It makes absolutely no sense. And I think there's this huge problem where, you want to deny any progress in order to like make things seem more dire than they are so that you can push an agenda. But in reality, you can say things have gotten a lot better, and they have on almost every front in this country, while still acknowledging that there is yet more to be done, that you still have things to address. But to say that nothing's gotten better, it's sad to me anybody could be that, I'm just completely out of the loop.
Yeah, you're totally out of the loop, and it only gets worse because guess what? The students have thoughts about capitalism, and the thoughts are not good. So, first off, less than a quarter of students surveyed have a positive view of capitalism, which, while depressing, is not exactly surprising. However, what really shocked me is how some of these students defined capitalism.
I was just about to say, before you can ever give your opinion on capitalism, you should have to give a definition first because most people can't define it.
So the survey gave them three options. One, an economic system in which property is privately owned, exchange is voluntary, and production and pricing of goods and services are determined by market forces. I think that's a pretty correct, obviously it's complicated, it's a pretty correct definition. Number two, an economic system in which corporations utilize grants, special tax breaks, political connections, and special rules that favor them over competitors to earn profits. And three, I'm not sure. So what the second one obviously does not describe capitalism, right? That's like crony capitalism or corporatism. That's tons of infringements on the free market. But that is what 30% of the students said is how you define capitalism, especially the students who were more liberal leaning and opposed capitalism were more likely to incorrectly define it. So to me, if you can't even define the terms that you have these strong opinions about, that's a clear sign that you are being miseducated in your college education rather than prepared to be a responsible and informed citizen.
I don't even like calling that second definition crony capitalism because those things are actually a direct attack on the free market. They are using government and weaponizing it against the free market. So we've got to come up with another term for that. But I think there is this huge problem. And actually, I blame Republicans for this more than Democrats because Republicans have run around for decades saying that they believe in capitalism, that America's a capitalist country. And then they turn around and they push policies that look more like the second definition. And so you've got a lot of people coming up who look around at our economic system. They're being told America's a capitalist country. America has a capitalist government. Those things are not really true, but they look at what's going on. They see number two happening. They associate it with capitalism. And then they rightfully blame those things for the problems they see in society, but they attribute that to capitalism because they misunderstand that those activities going on, those policies being pushed are not truly capitalist. So Republicans need to quit calling themselves capitalists until they actually mean it. And we need to do a better job of distinguishing what we're actually living under because it's been a mixed economy. I mean, since the early 1900s, we have not had true straight capitalism in this country, probably ever, but especially since about 1910, 1912, it really started going downhill from there. And I also
think we have different markets are different levels of regulated and subsidized. So, for example, some like the healthcare industry. When I see people describe American healthcare as capitalist, even though a huge portion of the population is on government health insurance and all the rest are on heavily subsidized and regulated crony health insurance companies plans that through Obamacare or whatever, or when they call it capitalism, that's a good sign that no, like you don't know what capitalism is if you think that. But we have many other sectors that are, lightly regulated. Maybe there's small subsidies, but are largely free-ish markets. And those are the ones where prices have gone down a lot, actually, over the last few decades. And so that's part of being a mixed economy is that it's not just that our society overall has a mix of markets and government, but it's also that industry to industry, there's different levels of corporatism, right? Which is what I would prefer. You're right. I said crony capitalism out of habit. That is a bad term. Because
I'm not calling you out. I'm just saying in general, that's something that everybody does a good bit. And I think it's unhelpful because it continues to associate that with capitalism when in fact it is actually an attack on it. Another thing I think we need to be wary of, just a quick side note on the healthcare thing, I've noticed a lot of the mainstream media, especially left-leaning outlets, are starting to do this. The New York Times had a whole podcast on Sunday, sob storying about doctors and how little control they have over their lives, and like how bad the healthcare system is and how badly they're taken advantage of. And they kept blaming on the healthcare system being a quote, quote, for-profit system. And I was seething the entire time I was listening to this podcast because, of course, everything should be for profit. If it's not for profit, it's going to be terribly run. You're not going to have the right incentives in place. There's nothing wrong with something being for profit. And all of the issues that they were addressing under the healthcare system were due to overt regulation, were due to things like certificate of need laws that are giving corporations almost unilateral control over the healthcare sector and taking it away from small businesses and other people who want to participate in that market. And so you just got to watch these people because they're real slippery with their terms.
Much of the healthcare secretary revolves around and is dictated by Medicaid and Medicare, which are because there's such massive forces in the health insurance, which are both government programs. So, yeah, I mean, there are for-profit elements of our healthcare industry, but the idea that it's overall just revolves around profit is pretty far-fetched.
And or that we're not having to pick up under the for-profit side all the crap the government's doing, because when the government isn't paying doctors back fully under Medicare and Medicaid for their prices, guess who picks up the cost of that? Those get pushed on the paying customers. Yeah, so it all goes back to the government. And yeah, you just got to learn to watch these people is, I guess, what my whole point is here, is their words are really slippery. And it's annoying, but I also, when I look at polls like this, I don't even blame the college students or the younger people as much as I blame like media and educators.
I know what you're saying, but I still blame them a little. They have the world of information at their fingertips. They could educate themselves better. I get that they've been misled by Republicans and by their schools and their professors, but they could still educate themselves.
Fair enough. I'll give you that.
Hey guys, Brad here. I just want to make sure you're staying in the loop on all things space politics. We've also got 2 new shows you should check out. One is my new show, Damage Control, where I'm teaming up with right-of-center LGBT guests to restore sanity on these increasingly unhinged issues. Then there's Hannah's show, Propaganda, where she's reacting to videos of police brutality and exposing the systemic flaws in the U.S. criminal justice system. Check these all out on our individual Facebook and YouTube pages. And remember, Base Politics is a nonprofit organization, so you can help us move the culture through content by going to base-politics.com and donating today.
All right, so now you're going to tell us about a fake kidnapping?
Guys, buckle up. This case is a wild ride. We have to talk about Carlee Russell. Brad, had you heard about this case before I brought it to you?
Yes, but I'd only heard about it in this horrible story about how this woman pulled over because she saw a toddler and then she was abducted and everyone was talking about this and like prayers up and all this. And then you texted me and you were like, hold up, this is sus. And then little do we know, it has turned out to be quite sus.
Yeah, it really has. So this started going down while we were in Memphis for Freedom Fest like 2 weeks ago. I actually was watching some of the videos on TikTok at the airport when I was leaving Freedom Fest. And my thought was, I need to go on and make a video about this because I'm going to get into the reasons why I felt compelled to do that. But thankfully, I didn't do it because I was in the airport and I was traveling. I didn't have time because I would have been caught up in this whole thing. So guys, sometimes it waits to weigh in on, or it pays to wait on things and wait for all the details to come out because this ended up being super problematic. So just to set kind of the context of why this story is important and interesting to me, according to data from the Black and Missing Foundation, nearly 40% of the hundreds of thousands of people that go missing every year are people of color, and 39% of the children that go missing are Black specifically. Keep in mind that Black people make up only 13% of the population, so they are vastly outweighed in the missing persons population. But you probably would not be aware of that if you follow the mainstream media. And I've talked about this on the show before. The late journalist Gwen Ifill coined the phrase missing white woman syndrome, and it basically describes the media's fascination with and detailed coverage of cases of missing or endangered white women, compared to what seems to be mostly just interest in covering the disappearances of people of color and men, I will add, right? You really don't see those kinds of missing people blow up, even though men go missing. I think it's 50-50 between men and women, last data I saw. So there is a focus on missing white women in the media. They get more resources, they get more attention, they tend to have larger funds to pay out to reward people if they help find them. And this is something that has begun to be talked about more and more, especially on like TikTok. As we see more independent media popping up, there's a lot of people who are really conscious of this. And that's why I felt compelled to weigh in on Carlee's case, because she is a young Black woman. I want to roll this clip really quickly, talking about missing white woman syndrome and how other people are kind of thinking about it.
Shall we talk about missing white woman syndrome?
Well, missing white woman syndrome is a social phenomenon that tells us that if you go missing in America and you're white, you get 3 times more press coverage on average than a missing black person. And if you're a woman, you get 3 times again than if you're a missing man, which means that a missing white woman gets 9 times more media coverage than a missing black man. And that is missing white woman syndrome.
Wow. 9 times more coverage. That's pretty jarring.
Yeah, have you thought about that before, just out of curiosity? I know we kind of have we talked about it during the Gabby Petito case a little bit, but I'm curious, like, is that something that's you've noticed in the media, or is it just me? Because I've been hyper aware of it since like college.
I have been aware of it on yes, but I don't think I would have guessed. I would have guessed if you'd asked me, and I've definitely heard people talk about it. I would have said that women who go missing get a lot more media attention than men, and I would have probably said white women get more than Black women. But I don't think I would have pegged it that much. I don't think I would have expected a discrepancy to be that huge.
Yeah, it was interesting. The reason I first thought about it was back in college. One of my best friends, Amisha, who is Black, pointed this out to me. She said, "Can you name a famous Black person who went missing?" And I was like, no, whereas I could name off the top of my head like 10 well-known cases of white women who've gone missing. And it just stuck with me after she said that, because it really bothered me on like a very deep level. And I think other people, again, have started noticing this more and more. But Carlee's case seemed to be breaking that mold. While the details were pretty harrowing, there was kind of like a camaraderie and sort of celebratory effect that TikTok and the Black community were rallying to make Carlee Russell's case go national. And again, this was not really mainstream media driven. It was more like independent journalists, influencers, content creators, which I think is just one of many ways that new media is trumping legacy media, because I think individuals have power to notice problematic, trends in media and break them. So that was why I at first thought I need to weigh in on this too. The details went like this. It began on Thursday, July 13th. Family members of Carlee Russell say that she left the Woodhouse Spa at the Summit where she worked in Hoover, Alabama. She then stopped by Taziki's at the Colonnade at 9 p.m. to pick up food for herself and her mother. At 9:34 p.m., Hoover 911 received a call from the 25-year-old who told the dispatcher that she found a toddler wandering on the side of the interstate. Let's roll that clip.
911, where's your emergency?
Hi, I am on Interstate 459, and there is a kid just walking by themselves.
Oh, hold on. Where on 459 are you?
Towards Tuscaloosa.
Okay. And was the child on the left or right side?
On the right side.
Were they walking northbound or southbound?
They're walking towards Tuscaloosa.
Walking southbound? Or how old do they look?
Like a toddler, like maybe like 3 or 4.
Did you pull over with them? Are you still with them?
Yes.
Okay, are you with the child right now?
No, I'm not. I didn't get out of the car. I can see them though.
Do you mind staying and keeping an eye on them until we get there?
Yeah,
okay.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, what kind of car are you in?
I'm in a red Mercedes-Benz.
Okay, did you talk to the child at all, or did you say anything to them?
No.
Okay.
No.
Do they look like they're injured?
No, they don't.
Are they white, Black, Hispanic, or Asian?
They're white.
Okay. Is it male or female?
I think it's a little boy.
White male? Okay. Is he wearing clothes?
Yes.
Okay. What is he wearing?
It's a white T-shirt, and it doesn't look like he has any pants on. It looks like a diaper.
And you don't see any cars anywhere?
No cars are anywhere.
All right. What's your name?
My name is Carlee Russell.
And you don't see any injuries on the child from where you're at, correct?
No, but I can't really see them that good.
Okay, try to keep an eye on them for the best you can, because I don't want you to lose track of them.
Okay.
All right, and do they have shoes on?
No.
No shoes?
Not that I can see. I can't really see that well.
Okay. All right. I've got them on the way, okay? Just try to keep an eye on them, but officers are on the way, okay?
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
When officers arrived at the scene, Russell and the child were nowhere to be found, but her car, her wig, and her cell phone were on the roadway. And people started reacting. Yeah. People reacted very, very strongly to this because it just seemed so terrifying, right? Who wouldn't stop if you saw a toddler on the side of the interstate? Anybody would stop and you would get out to get it in your car at the very least because it's a very dangerous setting. And to think that maybe this child was some kind of a lure or a trap for her, I mean, it's just as bad as it gets, right? People were really upset. Immediately funds started pouring in. Crime Stoppers of Metro Alabama raised more than $63,000 in reward money to help find Russell.
Wow.
I want to roll this TikTok just to play one of many, many, many that took off, covering the initial reactions to Carlee going missing.
This is Carlee Russell, and she's from my hometown, Birmingham, Alabama. And last night, driving on the highway that I take to get home every single night, she was abducted. She saw a toddler on the side of the road. She called 911 and reported it. She hung up and called her sister-in-law. Her sister-in-law heard her get out the car and asked the child, "Are you okay?" Next thing she heard was screaming. After that, silence. The police pulled up 3 minutes later and they found Carlee's wig, her phone, her Apple Watch, and her car still running with the door open. Someone called in and reported that they saw a gray vehicle in front of Carlee's red Mercedes before the police arrived. But other than that, it's no leads on this case. This could have been anybody. Driving down the highway, if you see a toddler on the side of the road, of course you're going to be concerned.
So, Brad, thoughts so far?
Well, one, that video gave me hives because her fire alarm noise went off 3 times, and that noise is so triggering to me. But no, I totally get it. I get it. Anyone would have pulled over if they saw a toddler on the highway. And the idea that that could have been used as like a trap is chilling. This nightmare stuff.
Yeah, so most people were in our camp, right? Harrowing, terrible, really worried for her, but not everyone. There were many people who thought her story was sus from the beginning, notably many Black women. And I think this is so interesting. One, there were no other reports of a toddler being spotted on the side of the road, which is weird because it's a busy interstate. You would anticipate if there's a toddler wandering down the side of the road, other people would have seen it, other people would have reported it. There would have been a missing child report in the area. There was nothing of the sort. Also, traffic cameras, which are, sparse throughout various interstate sections, didn't pick up anything of the sort. So that was already weird. But the Black community in particular thought that the part about her wig being on the ground was like a smoking gun that something was up. And this is so interesting to me because
explain this to me, because I don't get it.
You got to get deep into the politics of Black hair on this, but this is great. So the New York Post actually covered this in depth. And according to their reporting, they said several hairstylists, wig experts, and salon patrons in Russell's hometown, all of whom are Black, told the Post that the wig immediately triggered suspicions that something seemed off, even before Russell reappeared. She would have certainly worn the wig at work, and it's unimaginable that she would have taken it off in the car. It would be like someone taking their underwear off, they said. The stylist said the wig appeared to be an expensive front lace wig that looked like a, quote, 613 color, which is a premium shade of platinum blonde. It is custom fitted and takes 10 to 15 minutes to remove, as is actually glued to the scalp in some places. Custom wigs can cost as much as $800 and are $200 the bare minimum, they said. That was when the majority of Birmingham was like, she's lying. That's when it was split down the middle, where there were those that believed her and those that thought she was lying. It was the wig, hairstylist Kyra Joyner, 23, from Hoover, told the Post. First of all, your wig is going to be secure. Second, if somebody's taking you, they're going to try to cause the least attention they can. If people see a wig on the side of the road, people call the police when they see mannequin heads hanging out the side of our cars, she said. So I love this. I love that this wig was like the smoking gun in the case for many people, where they were like, no, something's up. And this is why I've said it before, I'll say it again. If someone goes missing, if you're trying to solve something, take it to the internet before the police. These people are sleuths. They're amazing. They do some detailed work. I don't think anybody in the Hoover police force was into the politics of wigs enough to have these details at the ready. But the Black community had them. They were discussing this on TikTok, and Brad, I'll pause there for your reaction because I'm sorry, it's very funny.
It's very funny. I think it's amazing. I'm always so impressed by these internet sleuths, these Reddit investigators, these people on TikTok. And it's always a little depressing to me that sometimes they can put together things that like police have been investigating for years and can't find. Like what you'll hear these stories about true crime podcasts where their fans went and looked into it and they find the guilty person all these years later. And it's like, what were the police doing? Probably
Yeah.
too busy
Or they, like,
harassing people for smoking cigarettes in a park or something.
right. Or they prove that people are innocent. Like there's podcasts that have gotten people off death row that have been there for decades because they were able to prove these people were innocent before the courts could work it out. It's actually phenomenal. I love true crime for this reason. It's had amazing effects on the actual criminal justice system. So anyways, I'll set that aside. But yeah, it was pretty amazing the work that they were doing right there. I like that a lot. So this continues to go on for 2 days. Investigators are launching a massive search for Carlee during this time. On the Saturday after she went missing, police responded to a Red Roof Inn motel about 2 miles from the family's house, where a number of family members had arrived after saying Carlee called them and told them she was there. However, she wasn't discovered at the motel, and soon after that evening, she reappeared on her parents' front doorstep on foot. So, right?
What did she have to say for herself?
That was what was really weird is there was so little information coming out at first after this. They're like, yeah, she showed up on foot. She's okay. The Hoover police chief told AL.com that Carlee walked up to her parents' house and knocked on the front door late Saturday night. The family then called police, who arrived at the home shortly thereafter. She was taken to the UAB hospital because she was reportedly having trouble breathing, but she was released Sunday morning. Her mom said, we tried to hug her as best we could, but I had to stand back because she was not in a good state. Her boyfriend took to Instagram that evening to celebrate her return, and he wrote, she was literally fighting for her life for 48 hours, so until she's physically and mentally stable again, she is not able to give any updates or whereabouts on her kidnapper at this very moment. Russell's mother also told USA Today that her daughter was kidnapped and that the person responsible is absolutely still at large. So she wasn't really making statements. Her family was kind of like shielding her, it seemed, and saying like she's not in any condition where she can talk to police or give any explanations yet, but like information will be forthcoming. And so the initial reaction was just a huge relief. I want to roll this other TikTok, just kind of looking at how people felt. I mean, people were really emotional about this when she was discovered.
Okay, yeah, so I think that they let her go off the simple fact that, for one, they didn't expect all these people to be searching for a black girl. For two, they don't never search for us like they did for this black girl. For three, it was a $20,000 reward. Then another thing, like, they probably was anticipating, going crazy, arguing with each other. What the fuck we do? What do we do? I promise you, they probably had a whole argument about what they gonna do with this girl because everybody in the world looking for her.
So, Brad, like, you can tell people are relieved, but also they're kind of like patting themselves on the back, and for good reason, right? If this was true, then the Black community really rallied. They elevated this case. They got her national attention, and there was sort of this perception of like that scared the kidnappers off. They let her go. They weren't ready for this, and it's just kind of sad to watch now that we know what we know. I mean,
it does sound like a believable course of action that they would get all up in arms. They would investigate this. The kidnappers would panic and would let her go. But that's not what happened?
So that's not what happened. So while people were overjoyed that Carlee was safe, from the moment she returned, the story just kept getting weirder. Information about what exactly had happened, like I said, was very slowly trickling out. I kind of had the perception that police weren't like pushing her very hard for information, which was annoying because, again, it was this massive search, 2-day thing, and all of a sudden she's back and it kind of just fell flat. But then we began slowly getting in. I'll just let you hear these details fresh for yourself because I want your real-time reaction. Russell told detectives when she did finally speak with them that when she got out of her vehicle to check on the child, a man came from the woods, forced her into a car, and then she woke up in the trailer of a semi-truck, which I would think would be very just visible if there was a semi-truck helping to kidnap you. Anyways, she said she was taken by a white man with orange hair with a bald spot and a woman, and she said she heard a child crying. Russell said she was forced to undress, and she believes the two took pictures of her. She said the woman then played with her hair and fed her cheese crackers. She said she was eventually able to escape and ran through some woods before she was able to find her way back home. Now, the cheese crackers in particular have lit up the internet. We have to roll one of many TikToks addressing this very weird detail in her story.
Ever since that press conference, I've had questions about one important detail of that story. The cheese crackers. Was it Ritz Bits? Was it those cheese crackers that are put together already? A nice little spread? Was it sharp cheddar on a Ritz, or was it saltines with American? And then could be Cheese Whiz? I think this matters.
Brad, I don't know what kind of kidnappers these are. I've never heard of kidnappers feeding someone charcuterie before, but this is when the internet broke on Carlee, right? There were still people that were sort of in her camp. After these details came out, everyone was like, girl, get out of here. Like, your kidnappers played with your hair, gave you cheese crackers, and then you just got to run away. Like, no, something's not adding up at all.
Well, yeah, I don't even find the cheese crackers the most sus part of this. And more so, she believes they took pictures. Did they or did they not? And then wouldn't you notice that? And then she said she was eventually able to escape and ran through some woods before she was able to find her way and walk back home. I don't know about you, but if you drop me on a highway miles from my house right now at night or whatever, and then I escaped and ran through some woods, I would not be able to walk my way home. Like, I don't know. That part to me is a little harder to understand.
Right. She didn't have her phone. She didn't have a GPS. So I mean, I don't think I could get from here to downtown Atlanta without my GPS. Like, what? It doesn't make any sense. If somebody was trying to kidnap you, I think they'd drive you pretty far from the point where they first snatch you because people would be looking for you. So yeah, this is when people were just like, no more. Everybody turned against Carlee. And then the police released even more suspicious details. They said that before going missing, Carlee had been Googling some very odd things. 2 days before she left, Russell searched online whether or not you have to pay for an Amber Alert and what age it cuts off at. The day she was gone, Russell searched for local bus tickets as well as the abduction-based action movie Taken. And the police chief said, and the police chief said that investigators found other concerning searches that shed light on Russell's state of mind prior to her disappearance, but the police were not releasing them out of respect for her privacy. So I don't know what all this girl was Googling, but she Googled you have to pay for an Amber Alert. Ma'am. And that's where people get rightfully pissed off at Carlee because, again, there are hundreds of thousands of people missing. There are many Black people who are missing who would love to have this kind of coverage. Their families would do anything to get this kind of coverage and attention and resources for them. And yet this was all wasted on this woman who is very clearly lying about her entire stories. So police also were losing faith with Carlee after this. They said they had been unable to verify most of the initial statements and have no reason to believe there's a threat to public safety. At that time, detectives stopped short of accusing her of maliciously lying, instead questioning her mental state, but said they were now struggling to believe her story. Carlee then refused to be interviewed for a second time, they said, after initially giving them her elaborate abduction story. And it was also revealed that prior to going missing, she was seen on surveillance cameras stealing a dark bathrobe and toilet paper from the Woodhouse Spa where she worked. Now, Black TikTok in particular had a just visceral reaction to this online. I want to play 2 clips. Let's play this more serious one first.
So this woman called the police, pretended like she saw a toddler wandering on the side of the interstate, then snatched off her own wig and proceeded to walk into the woods pretending like she got abducted. She had people around the world on their knees praying to God that she was found safely as well as this toddler. Meanwhile, the police just found her Google searches where she's sitting here looking up the movie Taken and wondering how much it costs to get an Amber Alert sent out. You completely distracted the world from the fact that there are actually 500,000 new children a year in the United States going missing. People's time and emotions are not to be played with, and neither is child trafficking. There are actually people out there missing who desperately need our help.
So he makes great points. Carlee not only lied, she stole resources from missing kids, especially missing Black kids who, again, their families, many of them would kill to have the kind of coverage and resources and attention that she got. So everybody is justified in being thoroughly pissed off at Carlee. This is absolutely inexcusable. But some of the reactions were also pretty funny. And I want to play this other clip from TikTok. This woman is hilarious. And I think she speaks for us all. Also, before we roll this TikTok, guys, just a quick language warning. She says a lot of profanity, but I'm leaving it in because it's hilarious.
This is Carlee Russell. Carlee, bitch, you was lying this whole motherfucking time. You got me on here acting like I'm Oprah Winfrey, ho. Bitch, I done peeled off every single one of my lashes, ho, because I'm so stressed out about you, bitch. I'm talking about I keep watching the highway footage. I just swear up and down a midget got you in a headlock, bitch. But that's really you going in your back seat to get the snacks from Target, bitch. Bitch, I done called my grandma about you, ho. I done told my grandma to create a prayer circle for you. I really was worried. Then you done stole from your fucking job. You done put the money in your sock. Bitch, you done rolled up to your mama's house butt-ass naked, but you got some money in your sock. Some of the kidnappers gave it to me. So the kidnappers gave you a parting gift. This why they don't believe us when we be missing, bitch. It's really people out here that need fucking help and you wasting our time because you trying to make a nigga mad. You finna piss me the fuck off, Carlee. I really made a video about this shit. I don't be speaking on nothing, but I spoke on your lying ass. And you had to be from Birmingham, too.
Wow, that was quite something. But colorful language aside, I mean, her fundamental point that this discredits real victims is totally true. I mean, it's Jussie Smollett 2.0. I don't understand the psychology of why someone would do something, especially knowing how much it will hurt real victims and real survivors in the future.
I mean, I think we can say Carlee is not an intellectual for sure. She clearly didn't think this through. Whether or not she was having some kind of mental break, we haven't been given a reason yet for why she did what she did. She did issue a confession/apology through her attorney. He sent a statement to the Hoover police chief last Monday. He said, "My client has given me permission to make the following statement on her behalf. There was no kidnapping on July 13th, 2023. My client did not see a baby on the side of the road. My client did not leave the Hoover area when she was identified as a missing person. My client did not have any help in this incident, but this was a single act done by herself. My client was not with anyone or at any hotel during the time she was missing. My client apologizes for her actions to the community, the volunteers who were searching for her, to the Hoover Police Department and other agencies, as well as to her friends and family." Charges, by the way, have not been filed, but may be forthcoming. Police say that they are discussing that with the district attorney. And her boyfriend has broken up with her and has been he's been talking to the media a lot. He's really taken his moment in the spotlight here. So I don't know what all will shake out of this.
She deserves to be dumped based off of this.
Yeah, kind of a red flag. There's been some internet talk. Their boyfriend was cheating on her and she was trying to go missing to get his attention. And that's why she wanted the Amber Alert. But none of that's been verified. We haven't been given an actual reason by anybody.
That would not justify this.
No, nothing justifies this, to be clear. But I think people are really curious, what were the motivations? Did she have a mental break? What was going on? Personally, I think charges should be filed. This is, again, it's inexcusable. You're wasting tremendous resources. And you did just make it that much harder for Black people to get the attention they should get when they go missing or are harmed in the media. So just, bad all around. But I will say I appreciate the effort and the conscious effort that many people online were making to try to even out this disparity in coverage. I hope that this doesn't detract from that in the future, because this is an outlier. The majority of people who go missing are legitimately missing, are being harmed, are in danger, and we need to take those cases seriously, especially for children. So Carlee needs to get her comeuppance, and this was a wild ride. But I do think there is a small silver lining in it, and in that this case did blow up. So I guess that's my 2 cents. Hey guys, Hannah here. Big things are happening at Base Politics, and we want to make sure you stay in the loop with all of our productions and developments. If you like the Base Politics podcast, you can find it every Wednesday morning on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Brad's YouTube. If you want to support the show, be sure to join the Base Politics Locals channel, where you can help produce it for only $5 a month. You can also catch our new shows, Propaganda and Damage Control, every Saturday on our respective YouTubes and Facebook channels. On Damage Control, Brad teams up with right-of-center LGBT guests to restore sanity to the increasingly unhinged debate over these issues. And on Propaganda, I'm taking video footage of police behaving badly every week and using those videos to expose problems within U.S. policing and the laws that guide it. Remember, Base Politics is a nonprofit organization dedicated to moving the culture through content. If you want to be a part of these efforts, you can donate to fund our work at base-politics.com.
All right, Hannah. So next up, I want to talk about this amazing CNN segment, because the crime and shoplifting problem has gotten so bad in San Francisco that even CNN and liberal media outlets cannot ignore it anymore.
Richie Greenberg walked into a San Francisco Walgreens when he saw in the frozen food section this.
Chains, heavy chains that went from padlock to padlock on both sides of the doors, and this was bizarre, something I'd never seen before. This is just more icing on the cake, telling us that rampant crime has become a regular part of life.
So typical that in the 30 minutes we were at this Walgreens, we watched 3 people, including this man, steal.
Did that guy pay? Did that guy pay? He didn't pay.
Walgreens says this Richmond neighborhood store with aisles of products like mustard locked behind plexiglass has the highest theft rate of all their nearly 9,000 U.S. stores, hit more than a dozen times a day. When thieves turned to cleaning out ice cream and frozen burritos, workers grew so frustrated they resorted to the chains. They were ordered down by corporate because of the negative messaging. But Walgreens isn't the only retailer impacted in San Francisco.
You have to ask an employee for help.
At this store, frozen food is controlled with a cable lock. Fake eyelashes locked behind plexiglass, along with lotion and nail polish. At another grocery store, $14 bags of coffee under lock and key.
So, I mean, mustard is locked up. I mean, the CNN crew was there for 30 minutes and they saw 3 people steal. This is out of control.
I mean, what's the point of even being open at this point? If you were going to try to go in there and just simply shop, it would be almost impossible. You'd be having to get somebody to unlock various cases. It would take forever to get through there the legal way. And if you're going to have this much stealing, it just doesn't seem like it's even worth it to live there. And honestly, I would think that that's the best thing businesses could do in response to some of these crazy policies is just shut down and leave. Because if you create deserts where there are bad policies, people will learn a lesson. The politicians will learn a lesson. They'll have to change. And that's what's going to happen in these places like San Francisco. They've been run into the ground. There's no excuse for these kinds of things being on the books. I'm a criminal justice reform warrior. I am such a believer in decriminalizing nonviolent behavior and in decriminalizing things that don't actually hurt someone else's person or property. This is not that. And I think that when you've seen these really blue cities start to actually decriminalize real things that should be criminalized, that's a bridge too far. And it actually undermines the case for other criminal justice reform that does need to happen, because then people point to places like San Francisco and say, look, they did all this criminal justice reform. Look how badly it's going. It's like, yeah, well, they did it asshat backwards, right? They didn't come in and actually get rid of stupid things like zoning laws or regulations or like, poverty crimes, basically, for like having your tail light out. They came in and actually decriminalized things that should be criminal. Stealing from somebody should be criminal. Hurting somebody else's property should be criminal. You should go to jail for that. And I don't understand where this instinct comes from other than communism, because they want people to be able to actually, I think, take other people's property and things. And this is the end result.
Yeah, but so the first point you made about stores closing is happening in San Francisco. So reading from the Wall Street Journal here, 22 stores have shut in the city since 2016. The San Francisco Chronicle reports that theft in Walgreens San Francisco stores is 4 times the average for stores elsewhere in the country, and the chain spends 35 times more on security guards in the city than elsewhere. So they're closing up, and it's not just Walgreens. CVS, all these companies have complained of this. And, some people are suspicious of the claims of the companies. And I get that. They obviously have an agenda. But when CNN goes there for 30 minutes and sees 3 people walk out with merch unpaid, clearly there's a problem. And you have to ask yourself why. And here again from the Journal, much of this lawlessness can be linked to Proposition 47, a California ballot initiative passed in 2014, under which theft of less than 950 goods is treated as a nonviolent misdemeanor and rarely prosecuted. Out of concern for safety and potential lawsuits, stores tell employees and security guards not to intervene when they witness a crime. Most suspects, if they are pursued at all by police, are soon released. So Californians effectively decriminalized shoplifting, and not surprisingly, they have more of it. I mean, this is insane to me. One of the only functions of government that is necessary and proper is protecting property rights, because you cannot have a functioning market if people can just steal at will. And it really seems like they expect businesses to just operate in an environment where people can walk in and take their crap. I do understand the rule, by the way, of telling employees not to like engage the shoplifters for liability purposes, for physical safety, but that's why you're supposed to have law and order and police and basic things. I mean, there's a reason this doesn't happen in everywhere in this country, right? Our police aren't great, but they do at least arrest shoplifters in many places. Apparently not in San Francisco, and it's such an absolute mess that even CNN's credulous reporters can't help but just be flabbergasted at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's very audacious. Like, man's walking out broad daylight with something in his arms, not paying. And if you know there aren't going to be repercussions, then why would you not? And this is one problem. I mean, this is a bit of a tangent. This is one issue I have with like anarchists and why I'm not there. I'm a very small government person. I would say I'm a min anarchist, but you have to have laws that protect people's person and property, because if you do not, if there are not repercussions, if people do not fear being caught or punished for violating those things of others, there are a lot of people who simply will do that. And I think that that's, something we've said in criminal justice reform for a long time, is that the best way to actually tamp down on violence and all other crimes is the assuredness that one will get caught. That's the best deterrent to criminality, is that, right? It's not a severe punishment even necessarily. It's the assurance you'll be caught and punished in some mechanism or another. But the reality in the U.S. is that the criminals are increasingly betting they won't get caught. And they're not wrong, because our clearance rates are in the trash, even where the laws are still on the books. And then you have blue cities like this that are actually just getting rid of the laws altogether. And, it's not even just happening in places like that. Like, I know there was a Lululemon store a little north of Atlanta last month where they had a policy that employees should not interfere with somebody stealing clothing from them. And somebody came in and stole, and like, I think it was the assistant manager did confront them, and she got fired for doing that. So I think that we see this attitude starting to like seep across corporations of like, just take the stuff. And I don't think that that's a good idea. I agree. You don't want to put your employees in harm's way or create liability issues, but have undercover policemen or have undercover security there. I know when I worked at a grocery store in high school, we had a man named Joe. He was retired law enforcement. He walked around, pretended to be a shopper. He caught shoplifters left and right. One time he caught somebody with a turkey down their pants trying to walk out the front door. He was on it. He was amazing. I loved Joe. And that's, I mean, how much is that, right? Like, you pay somebody hourly to do that. You save all of the amounts that you would have stolen from you. It's just common sense, good business.
I want to say one thing. We need to morally stigmatize this again more as a society, because you'll see people downplaying or defending this and acting as if, oh, these are people stealing to feed their families. First off, that would still be wrong, but that's also not most of what's happening here. A lot of this is organized retail theft, where criminal rings are stealing all this stuff and then reselling it. And it is not, we're not talking about starving moms of 5 who have nowhere else to turn, who steal a loaf of bread. That is not what we're talking about here.
Also, this isn't Aladdin. It's BS. If you want a meal in America, you can get one. The requirement is often that you have to stop doing drugs. And that is why people don't want to go to some of these shelters. That is still a choice. Nobody is just hungry in America. You have free lunches.
There's food stamps too, and other stuff.
There's shelters. There's churches. I mean, I used to volunteer at places in New York City. A lot of these people game the system, and they go to multiple charity dinners a night. You can get food. You do not have to steal. I will never buy that excuse. And not to say that these programs are managed well, but we have a crazy amount of assistance for people who are poor or hungry in this country. If you are willing to not do drugs and you're willing to get on the ladder to start working your way up, you can do it in America, and I won't hear anything contrary to that. It's just simply not true.
All right, on to our mailbag. We have a couple weeks worth of things to fly through, including some negative feedback, like from Barry Turnbull, who says, Democrat podcasters suck, and misspelled podcasters. Well, I will just say, if you perceive us to be Democrat podcasters, your perception skills are lacking.
You maybe need to go take a political science 101 class and come back and give that another good old-fashioned try, my dude. Let's see. Okay, Canolabo says, Brad is in the dog cult. He cares more about dogs than he cares about America. FYI, dogs are not really afraid of fireworks. They just hate freedom.
I think he's kidding, but yes, I do care more about dogs than America, and I stand by that. Uh, Another person says, as a bisexual woman, this podcast really helps me feel as though I'm not alone and there's still hope for humanity. Thank you for putting in all the work and doing an amazing job and shedding a light on the craziness in our world. I appreciate you both. Please never give up on spreading the word. You make a bigger impact than you'll ever know. Oh, that is so sweet. And, you know, most of the comments we get are negative because most of the people who comment are the people with really strong feelings, and they tend to be the ones with negative feelings. So it's good to get some actual nice ones. Hannah, this next one, though, I hope you're prepared.
I just glanced at it. I feel sick. So the next comment says, I am 14 years old and I'm the biggest follower of Andrew Tate. Most of my school friends agree with everything Andrew Tate says about women. I mean, that tracks because your brain's mushy, right? Like, your brain isn't fully formed till you're 25, especially the compartment that is primarily in charge of decision making and judgment. So I'm not surprised to hear this, sweetie. I hope it turns around for you. You've got a long life of solitude ahead of you.
I'll just say this. Hopefully you will develop and mature and find some better role models for your masculinity, because somebody who treats women as Andrew Tate treats women is a horrible, horrible example of a man.
It makes me sad. I often hear men in this camp, in the Andrew Tate camp, call women fatherless when they like push back on him or like denounce things he's saying. But I feel like that's really projecting, because to me, anybody who likes Andrew Tate, who thinks he's an example of masculinity, is lacking in a strong male role model in their life. Because anybody who had a strong father, I mean, whoo boy, if my brothers were caught watching this kind of crud, my daddy would have had them bent over and had a belt out. Like, no siree, this would not have been happening in my house.
Well, look, I didn't have a strong father figure in my life, and I still was wise enough to not.
Turned out good. Yeah, not an excuse.
Next up Sean says, you look like a geek and talk like a geek.
Which one of us?
Probably me, if I had to guess. You don't talk like a geek.
I do talk like a geek. I just, like, because I wear makeup, I get away with it, but I actually think I'm extremely nerdy. I think that's a compliment. Geeks are cool.
I'm not offended by it at all.
Yeah. Mark Hammer says, Brad bringing that strong feminine energy. What?
I did. I replied to this and I said, yes, queen.
That's so weird to me, because I have to say, you are the least effeminate gay guy I know. Like, when I first met you, because we only knew each other online for a long time, and when I first met you, I thought I was going to get more of that, like, yes, queen energy. You're never that way. You're very, like, straightforward, serious.
I think, I don't know. I feel like I have a little bit of it. I don't really care, though.
Online you do. In print. In person?
Yeah, not so much, yeah.
Yeah.
But I will say, I also I don't care. That's not an insult. Unless you think very lowly of women, which I'm guessing you must, to call someone feminine is perhaps a description that may or may not be correct, but it's not an insult. All right. Sailor Galaxy says, guys, thank you for the content. It is so refreshing to hear rational takes on recent situations. Left media is insane, and radical right media is becoming insane too. But you bring some faith. I also can't wait for new damage control content.
Love it. Iceflick says, as much as I don't like you, Brad Polumbo, it was so good to hear what you had to say in the intro about Andrew Tate. I never understood why conservatives would follow anyone like him. It goes to show how much bullcrap these people care about the nuclear family.
All right. Well, look, I find it interesting that you would actively dislike someone but watch their videos. But hey, I'm monetizing it, so please continue.
We'll take it.
Johnny Mac says, Hannah, warrantless spying is bad. Also, Hannah, search through your BF's phone without permission to see if he likes a person I abhorrently hate with a passion. There are some problems with this comparison.
There are so many problems here. One, you are not the government. Warrantless spying is bad. The government needs a warrant. I don't really think that's an apples to apples comparison. But two, I never said to go through your boyfriend's phone.
You said look at their likes, which is public information.
Public likes, my guy. This is why women are better detectives, though. I mean, like, we have so many ways of finding things out about you that is all online and you don't even know. We don't need to go through your phone. In fact, I would say if I ever was dating somebody and I felt the need to go through their phone, I would probably just break up with them, because I trust my intuition enough to, like, need to just get out of there at that point.
Yeah, there's definitely trust issues. I never have I ever felt the need to look at my boyfriend's phone. It just,
I don't like that. I mean, I have always had like access to my partner's phone and usually back like the same way back and forth, but like never would I ever just sit there and like go through their phone to like spy on them. Maybe if I needed to use their phone or something, I'd open it. But yeah, I don't actually encourage that behavior. I think that that's indicative of a really bad relationship. All right, let's move on to hot takes. Brad, mine came from Memphis. So as you know, you and I were both pretty hungry in Memphis. We were having a hard time getting our hands on some food throughout the conference. A lot of stuff wasn't open in Memphis. It was kind of a ghost town. RFK Jr. starved us at his event, didn't bring out food until after 10 p.m. We left and ordered Uber Eats. So we had a hard time, but I was kind of complaining about this online and everyone's like, just get some barbecue. Just get some barbecue. You're in Memphis. And I said, barbecue's not that good. And only people from the North think so. I stand by this. I think barbecue is like the spaghetti of the South. It's fine. It'll make do in a haste. It's easy to like feed a lot of people cheaply with. But barbecue is the food you get at like church, programs, at like political events. Oh God, every political event in the South. When I first got into politics, I thought it would be like very House of Cards, like champagne, dresses at receptions. No, everything you do, political events in the South, it's like blue jeans, boots, and barbecue, and that's what you're stuck with. So I just think barbecue is a very average food. I'll eat it in a pinch, but I would never like go out of my way to go eat barbecue. I think that's very weird. And I've noticed that people from the North, when they come down South, they're like obsessed. Like they want to go eat at a barbecue restaurant. Like this is just odd, but okay.
See, I like it, but I'm a person from the North, so.
You're from the North. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there are people in the South who really like it, but I don't know them. I just think it's like a very rank and file kind of food. To me, it's like a PB&J. Like I'm not actively seeking it out.
All right, my hot take is that being fat should not be a protected class. So, New York City recently added weight discrimination to its civil rights law. So you literally, they're treating it as akin to being black or being gay, and that you can't fire or not hire someone because of their weight or anything. And look, I don't think that discriminating against someone on the basis of their weight would be, in most situations, an appropriate or kind thing to do. I think for most jobs, it shouldn't really matter. But I am really against this idea of conflating things that are in almost all situations a choice or a responsibility of a result of your choices with inanimate characteristics that are unchangeable, like skin color or sexuality. And so, I mean, I just totally reject this. I think if somebody wants to discriminate against people or draw conclusions about them because they are massively overweight, maybe personally you might find that distasteful or think they shouldn't do that, but that certainly should not be illegal.
Well, and if they are making it illegal and putting it under a protected class, I'm going to assume that means that you are then forced to provide accommodations for them. Am I right in that assumption? Probably. Yeah, I don't like that. All right, guys. Well, that's a wrap. Glad we finally got to the mailbag again today. Don't forget, leave us a comment, leave us a review on Apple iTunes. We'll read it on the show. And until next week, stay based.